You're listening to the Chopped Podcast, episode number 121. Hey everyone, welcome to the Chop Podcast. You know I'm your host Marley. I'm with the site Namely Marley, and you are in for something extra special today because you've tuned into episode number 5 of Blog Talk. My co-host Trevor Depth is here with me today. Hey Trevor, how are you doing?
Heyo, I am doing fantastic. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. You know, honestly, I am really doing fantastic as well.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. As you and I were talking beforehand, I was letting you know that we spent a week doing what we called Recipe Week, where Sean's gonna be out of town, so we've just been like cooking like crazy, and we've got all these recipes done for a long time, and I feel really good, I guess, because of that.
And now your freezer is full for the next month of food that you guys still have to eat.
Yes. We have some really good food in our fridge downstairs.
Love it. I love it.
So I just wanted to let everybody know that Trevor is with the site. He and his wife do the site Show Me the Yummy, and he is also with the site The Blog Village. I think you should check them both out. Trevor, you have anything else you want to say about things that you're doing right now with Blog Village?
No, I mean, everything's going great. We're just there to help people create, grow, and monetize their blogs, and it's an awesome community. But things are great.
I am one of the lucky ones that are behind the scenes there, and it is a really wonderful community. And I also feel like, you know, Trevor, you're just so supportive and always present and helping people with questions. So it's a really, really supportive community.
Thanks, Marley.
You're very welcome. So why don't we talk a little bit about Blog Talk here and what we're doing? Because I always feel like it's kind of, good to catch. If you're listening to past ones, you pretty much know what we're doing here. But then again, what about some newbie, Trevor? What if they're going to feel lost and confused?
You know what? I'm going to help them right now, Marley.
Yeah, good.
So with Blog Talk, the idea is to answer some of those questions that are floating around out in the blogiverse. I just coined that term, the blogiverse. Has someone else done that? Anyway. And,
no, I think that's unique. That's unique. It's you.
And to just help make some of that stuff a little more approachable, answer some things that are on people's minds, and hopefully give you some guidance that you can take, apply it to what you're doing, and hopefully it'll help you succeed a little bit more in some area.
Love it. Because here's the deal. Blogging is hard. There's just no other way to say it. There are a lot of hats that we wear as bloggers. And so sometimes it's just nice to be a part of the conversation that others are having and try to understand what's going on.
And sometimes it's just nice to hang out with Marley and I. I mean,
I know. We're so fun.
I'm just going to throw that out there. I mean, we're a hoot.
Who would not want to hang out with us, Trevor?
That's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying too. You raise a good point. Okay, here's the thing. Sometimes I can find myself like I am doing the work, right? And then I just kind of get grumpy about it. And I am not having fun when I'm grumpy about it.
No being grumpy. We're not going to have that.
No.
We're not going to have that. We're going to turn that frown upside down, Marley. That's what we're going to do.
That sounds like it could be a song or something. Turn that frown upside down.
I think that probably is some song somewhere, yeah.
Are you ever down? I mean, you are grumpy. You just seem like always positive.
Well, Jennifer will tell you that when I get hungry, I get hangry.
Oh,
I get a little grumpy when I'm hungry, which is why anytime she senses that, she just starts throwing food at me, and
you are the perfect line of business.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, exactly. I've positioned myself. It's like someone who gets sick a lot working at a hospital. I mean, I'm in the right place. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. There could be some kind of karmic attraction to this job.
Exactly.
I'm cranky when I don't have food, so let me work around food.
You know what that sounds? That sounds like the definition of a genius to me. I think I've cracked the code.
I'm telling you.
I've done it. I mean, I don't want to, I'm just saying. Makes a lot of sense if you think about it.
I think it definitely makes a lot of sense. So otherwise, though, you're a pretty upbeat person.
I think so. Yeah. I like to, see the world, whether it be the blogiverse or just the, everyday world as the glass half full kind of guy.
Yes. I like that. I like that. I feel like I'm that way most of the time. I do feel like I have these moments though, where I get, and not and they could be, it's really longer than moments. It could be I go through these periods where I'm like, I'm never going to figure this out, or this is just too hard or whatever. But I find that I'm happiest or best when I'm like stayed in this mindset that's like, how do I get better about this, and welcoming the challenge rather than feeling overwhelmed by it.
I like that. I think that's important. And I just want to go on record, and everybody else can hold me to this. If you ever feeling down, you just text me and I'll send you a hug emoji that's going to brighten your day. Just
Thank
let
you.
Me know. I'm on standby.
Okay, cool. I'm so glad to hear that. Okay, so why don't we start getting onto our list of questions? We've got some questions for the month.
Do it.
Okay. Let's let me just clarify for people. We get these questions either people will email us questions or we'll see them on social media. Another option is we're both in some Facebook groups that deal with other bloggers and food bloggers, and sometimes we'll pick up questions from there as well. So those are kind of our sources for questions.
Yeah, real questions from real people.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And you probably see them in your blogger village too, right? Where you kind of start to see some trends. These are things people are dealing with right now. So we want to answer those questions.
Love it.
Let's go to question 1. And here it is. What should you do when you receive emails from people you don't know asking for you to link to their site? And this follow-up question to that is why, I could probably say, why in the heck do they do this?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I get these emails a lot.
Yeah, we do too.
Yes.
Yeah, we do too. I think as you start to grow, then if you don't get these yet, it's going to be something that will be in your future at some point. And do you want to take this one, or should I run with it here to start?
I'll just start really quickly with the reason I think that they're doing this. And that is a lot of sites will see, they're trying to grow their audience, and they see your site as a site they would like to get a link back from. So they would love for you to link to their site to help their site grow.
Exactly.
Did I get that right?
No, you're exactly right. Yeah. It's a link building strategy, because one of the most important things with SEO and that Google looks at is, let's say there's a big site. Let's say Harvard is a site, and they're very well respected as a website online, and they link to Marley's site, who says, the 10 best ways to eat right to prevent a heart attack. I don't know. You should make that article though. Yeah. I just came up with that. That's for you.
I like that.
No, Google sees that as like, oh wow, this really important site, Harvard, just linked to Marley's site. That must mean that this content is really valuable. So that's an extreme example. But then it also goes to, if Marley's site is bigger than, Blogger X's site, and that Blogger X contacts her and says, hey, would you share a link to my recipe? Marley, the fact that Marley is the size that she is helping to tell Google that, oh, hey, this new site that's not very big is actually important also. And so people try to get links back. The more of those links, the more important it shows that a site is. And so they're just trying to build their SEO and get either a specific article or their whole site to show up earlier on in Google search results.
I actually like your example because it shows that there's another example to talk about there, and that is to get a link from something like an edu, like Harvard. Yep. Harvard is .edu is actually, there's hierarchy, right? So that would actually be really nice to get a link from Harvard.
Yeah. It's very valuable because they're not just going to be linking to random sites about things. It's going to really mean that the site that they're linking to, odds are, in Google's mind, really does hold some valuable content.
So I would say 9 times out of 10, or maybe even 9.5 times out of 10, when I get these emails, I immediately delete them. And they'll oftentimes do a follow-up. And I almost wonder if it's not like some automated thing that's sending out. I'm sitting here worried about what this person thinks, and it's probably not even a person.
I actually am so glad that you said that, because you're totally right. It's absolutely automated. And what most of these people are doing is they've either found a list of bloggers, or they're just generating a list of bloggers, and they're just sending out an automated message to all of them.
Fishing.
And then if they don't hear a response, another automated message goes out a week later, like, hey, just following up and make sure you heard about my content. I wanted to share this. And it's all automated. And I would say 10 out of 10 times we just delete them right away, because I know what people are doing. And also, I guess 10 times out of 10, they're just a very generic form email. It doesn't really have anything to do with our site or some sort of value. I mean, I'll read the first few lines, and if I'm quickly like, all right, this is just fake, then it's gone.
Yes.
And you're right though. Don't feel bad. don't feel bad about deleting it and not ever responding, because most of that stuff is automated. And you can tell which one's not.
Yes. That's right. You really can tell, even though they might even use your name, there's still, you can just, there's just a sense of feeling that.
Yeah. Those databases are out there with your blog, your email address, and your name or names are out there in the world in databases that people can
That's
pay
freaky.
for. Yeah. Yeah, I know.
But it happens.
Definitely happens.
And so sometimes you will get those from other bloggers. I just feel like those are, it's usually easy to tease those out. And it's usually, they're asking for something that feels a little more legitimate. It doesn't feel like, hey, just put my link on your site, would you please?
And I think it's important, look for the telltale signs. Are there any personal pieces of information where they're like, hey, for us, let's say, hey, we follow Show Me the Yummy, and we also have a golden retriever named Teddy. He's so cute. We saw what you guys did.
Yes.
It's very quickly obvious and evident if they do follow the blog and are aware of who we actually are, not just know our names.
Yes. So those are kind of some telltale signs. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, let's move on to question 2.
Yeah.
So this is a tough question. I like it, but it's also one that's going to be difficult to answer. So how can I help my site from getting hacked? This one also has a follow-up question, which is how do I recover when my site gets hacked, basically?
It's a tough question.
I know, we're both quiet.
It's because there are so many possibilities in it. It's not just, oh, my site was hacked. It's, did someone, insert some content onto your site? Can you not log into your site? Is it your social media that's been hacked and you can't log in, or that just people are posting things? I mean, there's so many there's a wide range of possibilities when people say hacked. And so I think that's what makes it kind of difficult to answer. But I think it'd be good to talk about some general best practices.
Security.
Yeah, security best practices.
I like that.
I think that would be maybe a good way to handle this.
So to help with answering this question, I actually asked Sean, my husband, he's a web developer for a living. So I asked him some tips. So if you want, we can kind of go through those.
Love it. Bring it on, Sean. You should make him record this next time, though. You should make him record it.
Next, I like that. I'll just drag him in.
It's like phone a friend. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's a good idea. That would be fun. Yeah. Okay. So first of all, he says, make sure you're on a host that makes security a priority.
Good. How do people know that?
There's a lot of different hosts you can use. You need to make sure that you're with a host that, has security as a priority. I think that's kind of a good way of, number one rule to go by.
And I think a good way of being able to tell that is, when you're reading about the different features that they offer, if they're not mentioning security or patching or, doing anything to make sure that your site is safe, that's probably a red flag. But if they're saying, that they are always watching out for things like, plugins that they know there are issues with, and doing site audits to make sure that your site's secure. And I mean, if they're doing all of those things, then that at least shows that there's some effort going in there. I think that's a really good one. Nice one, Sean.
Good job, Sean. Yeah. And you should probably also, I think aligned with that would be like, is there customer service available through your host that you can contact 24/7? Because, when your site's down, you want to be able to reach somebody right away.
Yeah. What happens in the event that something goes wrong? Because eventually something will go wrong. How do you contact them? That's really good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then he also says to be very picky about the plugins you install. Make sure to vet them thoroughly. I think that's a good idea.
Always, absolutely. Yes. It's so easy for a plugin developer to leave a way in for a hacker to get onto your site. And the thing is with that too, it's relatively easy for, if someone's like intending on hacking your site, it's pretty easy to figure out what plugins you have installed. And if they know that, let's say, plugin XYZ has a big hole that they can utilize to take control of your site, then as soon as they just go to your website and look at some pretty easy code to see, and if you have that plugin, then they know they can get into your site. So yeah, I would say look out for those plugins that have a huge install base. If there's 600 people using the plugin, that could be maybe not the safest way to go.
There you go. So just make sure you vet it. Usually they also have, there are ways to see, user reviews, things like that too, right?
Yep.
Yes.
And I mean, honestly, the safest thing is looking for the crowd in a way. If you see plugins that have 80,000, 100,000 people, because you can see that when you're installing a plugin, looking at I'm assuming most people are using WordPress. You can see how many people are currently active users. If it's tens upon tens of thousands of people, that's a much safer place to be than a small install base.
Okay, that's good to know. And then also, Sean says to make sure that you have a secure password for everything from hosting, your hosting account to your WordPress login, and et cetera.
You know what? That's great. Let me jump back. One other thing is also make sure you're keeping your plugins updated, because that's a big one. No matter what the plugin is, there's always new ways that people are finding to hack a site using a plugin. So even if it's a really well-renowned plugin, if it's 10 versions old and you haven't updated it, it still might be vulnerable, and they may have fixed it the moment they found out about it. But if you don't update it, then you're vulnerable, even though it's a really well-known plugin. So you gotta, when people put those updates.
You mean every time you go to the site
and it says
update your plugins? You shouldn't ignore that.
Well, you don't necessarily always need to install them, but you should at least read what the update is, because you can say view details. And a lot of times it'll say really important security update. Those ones always make sure you do right away. If it's like, we changed the...
I just like to put my hands over my eyes and go, no.
Yeah. That's a strength.
Okay. You're saying I need to stop doing that and actually update them or look and see what those updates are.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, good.
Sorry. So back secure passwords. Yeah.
It's important to have those secure. We actually use a tool for that, which is 1Password. It's a really secure.
It's amazing.
Do you use that too?
Oh, yes. I can't imagine my life. This is going to be quite an ad for them. I honestly can't imagine my life if we didn't use that, because it gives us a unique password for every single site login that we use. And it makes it on the phone and on the computer incredibly fast and easy to fill those passwords in and just move on. Even faster than using the same password that you have to type in. It's faster than that even. So it's more secure and faster.
And I just love it. It suggests passwords for you too. So, and they, you can say how many characters you want to have in it versus alphabet numbers or whatever. Yep. And I just love it.
Symbols, numbers, you can customize it. So if there's a certain site that requires certain things, you can have it generate whatever you want. It's great.
Yeah. So, and as the name implies, all you have to remember is the 1Password, and then it remembers everything else and fills it in. It's wonderful. I love it.
And the other really important thing, and the concept there, I just want to note, is that if somebody does somehow, let's say they sent you a fake Facebook email saying like, hey, we need you to check your account, and it's actually linking you to their site, and you accidentally enter in your login information and they now have your Facebook login information, that would suck. But at least they only have your Facebook login information. If you use the same password across all sites, suddenly they can check Instagram for your account. They can check Twitter. They can check if they know you have a website. They can check your iCloud address. I mean, it's a lot of people do the same thing for email addresses. It'll be like their first name, last name, first initial, last name, first initial, middle initial, last name. A lot of the first initial, last name, birth date.
Or it'll be the word password.
Right. But I mean, there are a lot of ways that people can find all of your social media accounts, your email accounts, your banking information. And so, it's really smart to not use the same password across all those things.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. And also I've heard people say that you shouldn't use admin as your username for your WordPress login.
Correct. No, because by doing that, you've taken one part of a two-part equation and you've already given it to them. So they don't need to guess. They don't need to guess your admin username and your password. All they have to guess is your password, and they can, try and go through that. So
right. So just try to be one step ahead if you can.
Yes. And I mean, ultimately, if someone is going to make a concerted effort to hack your site for whatever reason, they will succeed eventually. So you want to make it as difficult as possible, so that really it's just like your home, right? Think of your social media, your website, all of it. It's just like your house. If you make it look with a motion detector light, and maybe we've got a dog sign and you got a fence. If it doesn't look easy, they'll most likely move on to the next target that is easy, because it's not worth the trouble. That's kind of the goal, right? Is to just make it not easy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got that. That makes sense. Absolutely. Okay. So actually, I wanted to tell you that Sean sent me a link with other options. And so what I'll do is I'll put that in the show notes page for anybody who wants to check. It's like a WordPress tips for security. So
nice. Good.
Just come to the show notes page and we'll get that for you.
Awesome.
But what do we do? What do you have thoughts for people when they do get hacked? I would think the very first thing you'd want to do is call your hosting service.
I mean, that's sort of the number one thing is, yeah. I mean, and again, it's really going to vary on what has happened, but that's where that, contact to the host is going to be. And yes, that's the first thing I would do is contact them, because they'll be able to they should have the admin access to be able to at least start taking steps to resolving the situation.
Yes, perfect. So you want to make sure you know who your hosting service is and what their 800 number is, so you can call them at any time,
whatever it is. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so I think we covered that one. What do you think? You ready to move on?
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay, cool. So number 3, we talk a lot about photos and videos on Blog Talk. So I think it's time for that. My photos look super sharp and almost glowing with Lightroom, but when I move those pictures to my blog, they don't have the same crispness. We like crisp photos, don't we?
Yeah. This one comes up a lot, and there are a couple fundamental things that could be going on there. So one is that, when you're looking at Lightroom, you're looking at your full resolution. I mean, if you're shooting in RAW, a 30 megabyte file, and that's going to look really nice. That's not what you want to be loading on your blog. Obviously, you need to compress. You need to compress that image quite a bit, and that can introduce compression artifacting. It can, reduce some of the range of the color that you're looking at, the color gamut that you're looking at. And so, those are two of the probably most frequent things that affect that it doesn't look as good when it's on your site because it's compressed. So that's one. The other one that I would say is that there are things, especially with WordPress, if you have this situation, the first thing I'd tell you to check is go into Jetpack. If you're using Jetpack, which I know a lot of people do, and make sure that Photon, which is one of the modules within Jetpack, is off. That is WordPress's image. What's the word that is escaping me right this moment? It's their.
You need it most.
Yeah, I know. They're caching those images and they're serving the images for you. And what they're doing is they compress them a ton. And so that can really, people will upload the image, they'll be like, it's fine. The way you can tell if that's happening is when if you control click on an image and you say view image, if you don't see just your website address with that image path and it says something like wp1.com or / and then your web address, that's Photon that's additionally compressing your image. And I see that a lot. That makes people's images not look good.
And is that something everybody's experiencing, or is it just the person who's running the site? So everybody's experiencing this photo that's not looking so great.
Everyone's experiencing that. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's an important one that I think people should check.
Okay. That's like stop gate number 1 is just to check that, to make sure you've got that not checked. And then, what'd you call it again?
It's Photon. Yeah. Because if you're uploading an image and it's the right size and you've reduced it and you've, compressed it and it's compressed nicely, it's not too compressed, everything's really dialed in and it looks good, when maybe you're opening that compressed image on your computer, but then it's not on your site, that's a good probability that it's something like Photon that is getting in between the image from your site and they're additionally compressing it.
You described that very well. That's good. Are there other things that could be happening there?
I mean, that's the big one. I mean, obviously, if you have any type of image reduction plugin going on, you want to make sure that those settings match what you want and play around. But I mean, at that point, we start to get into there are a ton of other things that could potentially happen. But those are two of the most frequent ones. Your images are always going to be a little compressed. So just be ready for that. But just know that, there is one other one that happens a lot is if you're not creating a Retina version of your image. So I won't go into too much detail, but I'll only go into it in that if you want your images to be crisp on a Retina display screen, you double the width of the normal resolution that people would looking at on a non-Retina screen. And the reason I say that is because if you're used to, I'm going to say on our blog, our content area where our images are showing up is 600 pixels wide. We create images at 1200 pixels wide so that when someone is looking at those on a Retina screen, they look nice and high quality. So if you have a Retina screen, but you're uploading
And I do.
and you're uploading non-retina images. So if you were just uploading 600 pixel wide images, that is another reason why those images will not look good, because they're essentially, it would be the same as if you were looking on a non-retina screen at an image at 200%. It's just going to be kind of less high quality.
Yes.
You've zoomed in on it, so it's not looking as good. So that's another thing that potentially I see that happens sometimes with people.
So that's a situation though where if you have a retina screen, it may not be looking great to you, but some of the people who come to your site, it may be looking fine. That's one where it's kind of hit and miss.
Yeah, I'd say probably the majority of people, because I don't know what the percentage is, but we're still in a world where the greater percentage of screens right now are not retina screens, right? And
yes. Okay.
And that is, I'm glad you said mobile, because mobile's not the same thing, because that's already reducing. So, your 600 pixel wide, for us, 600 pixel wide images, a lot of devices aren't actually displaying 600 pixels wide. Pretty much any phone isn't doing 600 pixels wide. It's 480 and something like that. And
some change.
Yeah. And your viewing distance is different there. So it's not going to become as evident when you're looking at a phone. But if you're on a desktop, if you have like a MacBook Pro, let's say, and you have a retina screen, that's where that can come up. So if that's something that's important to you, you'll want to start doubling the resolution of the images that you're loading so that they also look good on a retina screen.
Okay, those are two really good tips. And I also think that this person is on the right track in that they're concerned about the way their images look on their site. So that's good.
Yeah.
Yes. But we also, you're talking about compression, and I do think it's important to keep, not to have so many images on the page that are large that will slow your site down, right? You've got to find that balance between file size and speed.
Yeah. So what we do, we aim for our retina images, 150 kilobytes, give or take. So they'll typically range from 150 to 200K for our retina images. For our non-retina images, we shoot for around 60K for those. So we're pretty aggressive because it's really important to have that experience go, really fast for people viewing the site. I've seen people have non-retina images that are 1.5 megabytes large, I would categorize as a problem.
Yes.
That's a red flag to Google. That's going to take people a long time to view those things. So you definitely want to be aware of what's going on there.
Do you remember when people were doing a lot of GIF images? And those are huge, those files.
Animated GIFs, yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are big.
Yeah. Those are really big files. And I tried a few of them too, but it's like, wow, I don't know how people can continue to do that. But
yeah.
So what about, I got a follow-up question for you. Just based on this question, I oftentimes will hear people talk about grainy or noisy pictures that show, we're talking about the pictures not being as sharp as we want them to be. But what about when people are talking about grainy versus noisy pictures?
Yeah, so there's a disconnect, I think, where people don't quite have the vocabulary to describe exactly what they're seeing, which makes it difficult then to troubleshoot the issue.
Are you saying I don't speak well?
No. No, but I think that, let's just run down what those are. So noisy and grainy are typically the same thing. And those most commonly come from the usage of a high ISO, and they exhibit themselves as, this is a hard one to articulate in just words, but I would, think of it like as if you were looking at a million pieces of sand with an image on it. Okay. So you see these very, tiny grains in your image. And that is noise, right? So that's grain. Those are, I'd call that grain and noise that your image is going to be introduced by a high ISO. Conversely, there is blanking. Sorry. Sorry. A compression artifact. Thank you. Man, I didn't drink my juice today. Compression artifacting, right? And so what artifacting looks like is, imagine if you took an image and the more you compress it, the more little the less squares that you had to compress. So let's say you made an image that's a picture of my face and you did a ton of compression. Compression artifacting would look like, let's say we made my face into just 4 squares and we had to pick a color for each of those squares. That's not going to look very good. Now, obviously, it's more than 4
Right.
squares, but if you see blockiness, those are compression artifacts, which is going to be coming from a JPEG that you're saving out. And that compression artifacting can give people the impression that their photo is blurry when the photo's not blurry. It's just that it's compressed a lot. And that's one where you see a lot from that, something like a photon, because they compress it pretty aggressively. But it's important to know the difference between those two. Noise, which is going to be from, a high ISO image, and compression artifacts, which is going to be coming from compressing your image and making it smaller. That's artifacting is blocky squares that you'll see. Noise is, and you actually, we were talking a little bit earlier, if you look in the shadows of images, that's where you can really see the noise more pronounced. Because in the shadow areas, you'll see that noise, and that typically comes from high ISO. That makes sense?
And so it sounds like one is from the process of shooting the picture, and another is post-processing.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you like the way your image looks, and in your mind you're like, there's no noise after you shot it, then it's not probably noise. It's most likely compression artifacting that you're seeing once you load it to your site. If when you're looking at it after you photographed it and there's a ton of noise, it's probably because you shot it with a really high ISO and there's noise on that image. It's only going to get exaggerated when you compress that image then.
Yes. And so the reason you're shooting the high ISO may be that it was getting darker. You're trying to push shooting this. You want to finish this recipe and get it shot. We've been there before, and the light is going away.
Yep, exactly.
So you either need to introduce artificial light or shoot it tomorrow.
Exactly. Yep, exactly.
Yes. And obviously different cameras can handle different levels of ISO and not shoot grainy images. So if you've got a really nice camera, you can bump up that ISO and it's not going to cause the graininess. Is that right?
Absolutely. Although I would say my preference is, and some people don't like this, but shoot with a tripod, and then you can just always shoot at a low ISO, and you really don't ever have to worry.
Yep.
You don't ever have to worry about cranking that up. Don't ever have to worry about noise.
I got you.
Yep.
We mostly shoot with a tripod, to be honest.
Yeah. Everything we shoot is with a tripod.
Really?
90,
yes.
I shouldn't say everything. 95% of everything. Overhead shots are typically
Are you sure it's not 96?
I'll have to check my numbers. But overhead shots we don't shoot with a tripod, but pretty much everything else is.
And I know there's like this temptation to shoot handheld because it's probably faster, but for us, it just seems like it's just worth it to put it on the tripod. And like you say, then we can shoot at a minimal ISO. We like that.
And it makes styling the images, I think, far easier because you know exactly where everything is. Yes. You don't have to try and recreate the angle that you were just at, and then you can't, and then you get frustrated because you're like, oh, that looked good. I just needed to move that little M&M, but now it's not looking right. So, I think... Yes. I think at the end of the day, personally, a tripod is a better option.
Now, this is another side question. Do you shoot tethered?
So we used to shoot, Jennifer does all the photography, and she used to shoot tethered always. We slowly, those connections are so delicate on the side of the camera, and we kind of started losing some of the connections sometime, and the cord was always really annoying to her. And so now we actually shoot with an iFi card to shoot wirelessly, or if your camera shoots wirelessly. And it's a little more of a process because we shoot in RAW, and the iFi cards are not built to be able to transfer RAW images. It's far too slow. So what we end up doing is we shoot with the lowest quality and smallest JPEG image, and it just really acts as a way to get an image onto the computer to monitor exactly what we're shooting and what's going on, and then we'll separately import the raw images at the end of the shoot and then do all our processing and everything on those.
And that's your way of kind of getting in and making sure it's a sharp image. You can kind of get in and look a little more closely.
Yeah, you can see the framing. It's just nicer than just on the tiny LCD. Yeah. You can even make some minor adjustments even to that really tiny JPEG just to kind of get an idea of where things are at. And it lets you see exposure really easily, and it just makes it easier.
How do you spell that? iFi card?
It's I, as in an eye on your face, and then FI. So I.
Okay, well, that's how I spelled it.
FI.
Right.
Yep.
What we do right now is we actually just use the LCD on the back of the camera, but Sean, he's able to zoom in very closely on the image and see how sharp it is, and that's how we know, that we can go on. But I love the idea of tethering. We are experimenting with that right now, so we can, sometimes you get the picture upstairs and look at the computer, and it's like, oh yeah, we should have done this differently. It would be nice to have a bigger image.
Well, and for Jennifer, when she's shooting, it's just nice also because you can really visually make your selections and put together exactly what your whole post of all the images is going to be and look at them all at once and decide, okay, do I have everything? Yep, that looks good. And then she can kind of then move on to the post-processing part without having to go back later.
Love it.
Yep.
Okay, cool. We talked about that one a lot, so we can move on now. I have just decided that we can move on.
It's your show, Marley. We're all here hanging out with you.
I'm so glad to. Okay. Here's the next question. And this is an interesting one because basically the question is asking this. Sometimes when I do a search on Google for my recipes, it will display the photo with the recipe, and sometimes it doesn't. Am I doing something wrong? That's the question. Mm-hmm. And I would say my answer is no, you're not doing anything wrong. I don't think.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you could be doing something wrong. But
or maybe. That's right. Or maybe you are.
Maybe it should be said that even if you're doing everything right, that still could happen. Google still might decide, oh, no, we're not going to show it this time or this search or, this week or next week. So sometimes those things happen. Google just like switches stuff around. They're testing things at all different times. So, that could be happening.
I feel like sometimes I've had things happen on my end. So, for example, I may change the featured image and that takes, I may still have an old photo that's showing, and even though I've updated that featured image, it just takes a while sometimes for things to happen.
Yeah, I think they're the best, your best friend is going to be going to the Google structured data testing tool. And you can Google that, or you can put a link in the show notes. And if you go to the structured data testing tool that Google provides, you can just enter in any URL. You can enter your URL, anybody's URL, and it will tell you if there are any errors, if there's any warnings. You can go into that, and if you're looking at a recipe, and if you don't see a line item there that says image and has an image listed, if you don't, it'll give you a warning or an error that there's no image, and then that will be your immediate indicator that there's a problem. If you have that in there, then you should be fine.
I have to ask a stupid question. Is that the same as Google Search Console?
No. So Google Search Console that's just kind of
like Webmaster Tools.
Yeah, is Webmaster Tools, right? Okay. That's a different thing. This is just a tool it's just like PageSpeed Insights. It's a tool that Google provides to give you a way of seeing when the Google bot goes to your site, exactly what that bot is seeing. So if it's finding the structured data or not, you would be able to, within Search Console, you should find the same thing in there somewhere. There's a report, I think, that'll give you warnings in structured data. I believe that's one of the items. And so you should also be able to see if there's any problems or warnings or errors, but it is a separate page. And if you haven't set up Google Search Console or Webmaster Tools is Google Search Console. They now call it Google Search Console. If you haven't set that up for your site, you should. But if you haven't, you can still go to the Google Structured Data Testing tool and find the same information about structured data.
And do you think people should be doing this on a regular basis? Like, just every now and then going and checking to make sure that everything is fine?
Well, you should have Google Search Console set up, and you should routinely, whether that's once a month or every couple months, go in and make sure that everything you're not getting errors on there.
A bunch of error messages.
Yeah, you can check it once a week if you want. Whatever that is, you should regularly be going there because you might install a plugin or update WordPress, or, you update a plugin, but then the developer made a mistake, and so now stuff's coming in wrong. Those things happen all the time. And so it's good to know. It's just one of those things about knowing what's going on with your site. And Search Console is really one of the most valuable things to be checking with that.
I think it's also fun while you're in there to see how many of your pages are, what your average position is in search results. That's kind of fun.
And valuable. There can be a lot of valuable insights that you can take.
Yeah, that's true. It's not just fun.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. But, if you're playing a game with yourself, it's fun. But yes, for the most part, it is very valuable. You want that number to constantly be getting lower. It's like golf. The lower your position, the better, right?
Yep.
So you want to be number one. If your average number was number one, you'd be rocking it.
Yeah, you'd be feeling really good about it.
Yes, unless your topic was like, matcha tea flakes or something. If that's the only thing you ever talked about and nobody was ever searching for that, then you'd be in trouble. But another thing I always think I'm looking for in Search Console is that I like to make sure that the number of index pages is going up. It's like it should be an upward trend, not down.
Yep, exactly. Yep. And that's where, you can submit your sitemap and make sure that Google knows about everything on your site. So it's a very valuable thing to have at your disposal.
Yes. But now I think what you're talking about in Google, what did you call it again? I wrote it down. I can't even read my writing.
It's just the Google Structured Data Testing Tool.
Yes. Okay. So do that to go in and make sure that basically what this is going to show you is that if there's any errors on search results or just on your site in general.
It's any errors with the structured data, which is typically on a food blog coming from your recipe card or your recipe plugin or however you are displaying the recipe. You want to make sure that is being read by Google appropriately, and it'll show you exactly how it's digesting all of that information on your site and if it's finding any problems. And it's important to note that warnings are different from errors. Errors are the ones that are a problem, and you definitely want to fix that. Warnings are things that it's just saying, for example, if you don't include nutritional information on your recipes, you'll get a warning saying, hey, you could also offer some nutritional data and we're not finding it. There are things like, so there are times where you have warnings. We have warnings. We don't do nutritional data, so we always get that warning. And then we also get things like, if it's something that's no bake and it says, there's no cook time listed, well, that's because there's no cook time for this particular recipe. So, those things happen, but you really want to watch out for those errors.
I got you. So then in answer to this question is, if you don't have a featured photo, then that's a pretty good reason why the photo isn't showing. But if you do have a featured photo, then just know that, it should probably be showing. If it's not at this moment, I find sometimes it takes a while for that photo to get picked up. So immediately after I publish a post, the photo won't be there.
And do know how your recipe plugin works, because some of them pull from like the featured image of the post, but some of them you have to set a separate recipe image. Generally, it automatically pulls from that, but just do be aware that that can vary depending on what you're using.
We really like to use a featured image because that way we can choose which photo it's being picked. But
so for us, we actually have a featured image for our blog post and a separate image that we select in our recipe plugin just for Google.
Nice.
Yeah.
And is that one closer up, or is there a difference between the two?
It's just size so that we know it's centered, so it'll show up nicely in the sidebar, the tray. So it's optimized to kind of look as good as possible.
Love it. Yeah. That sounds really good. Okay, so let's move on to our last question, unless you have something else to add on this one.
No, that was great.
Okay. Any recommendations for a social sharing plugin? And this, to me, I think this is a great question. I think making sure that your site is shareable is really important. And I take this question two ways. And that is, one might be like how your audience can share when they come to your site, how they can share your content. And the second part is how you can share your own content, like creating editorial calendars for sharing your content.
Right.
And as we have said before, there are a lot of options for how people can do this.
Yeah, that's the tough thing.
There's no end.
There's so many sharing plugins out there. And we can kind of should we throw out some of the bigger ones?
Yeah, like we use, we have a couple that we use. Like one of them is Add This, and another one is Sumo Me that we use for sharing. Yep. What we like about both of those is that it comes up on the side of the page rather than, at the bottom or the top.
Okay, I like that. Like the floating. You mean you have like the floating on the sidebar type things? Yeah. Yes. There's also, so other big ones. There's Shareaholic. We actually used to use Shareaholic. Now we use Social Warfare. And with all of these plugins, Social Warfare, some people have problems with that plugin on their site. We don't. It doesn't conflict with any of our plugins. And I like the way it looks, and I kind of like the way that it works. A lot of people have Shareaholic. It's difficult. I don't want to go too far one way or the other on any of these plugins just because they change a lot over time. So, if you're listening to this in 2 months, it could be very different. We moved away from Shareaholic, that's all I'll say, because I just didn't like some of the things that they were doing, and I didn't like the implementation of it, and you had to kind of go to their website to do it. I do like the way that Social Warfare works. With all of these, I think that, what you'd probably say and what I'd say is they all have their pluses and their minuses, and some people like the way some look, and some people like the way others look. The big one is you want to try and do some research to find which ones won't slow your site down, because a lot of times those sharing plugins can slow your site down, and you want to avoid that as much as possible.
Yes. Yes. And you're right. So it's really a matter of you figuring out what are the options that you want and then picking that one. And it doesn't hurt to change. Like we had add this for a while and we changed to SimoBee, and I think we've switched to a different one too. So just, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Just pick the one that works for you.
Exactly. And we're on our third sharing plugin. And I think the whole point is it's that, those aren't going to make and hopefully not break your site. It's about, just constantly being aware of what's out there, and, maybe something that was doing a really good job, they sort of slack on their features and what they're doing. And so then you can kind of investigate things, but it is a difficult, I don't want people to think, but just tell me which one to use. It's not that easy, because I would say if you're just starting out, and if your blog is in the earlier states of getting started, it's not as important. It becomes more important the more and more traffic that you start to get. And so, the more and more that can kind of slow down your site. So I would say don't obsess over it. Get something in there that works. And then as you grow, you're going to become exposed to more people who have that are using other things. And you can discuss with them what those are. But yeah, they're important.
And so what I'm hearing you say is, like, as your site's growing, that becomes more important because you have more eyeballs on your page and they have more opportunities to share your content, and that's good.
Yeah, and I just always try and reduce early on how many things people could potentially paralyze themselves from actually getting their blog growing.
I got you.
Because they're just spending time figuring out which plugin should I do, and they're spending 4 days doing that when really it's not worth 4 days right now. It's more valuable to get 4 days of content up and then, get to that when you get to that. But
that's good advice.
Yeah.
There's also other plugins that you can have, like Pinterest has their own plugins that then end up on the photos themselves. So there's so many plugins to think about.
Yes.
Okay, good. I like that.
Yeah, the key is with all this stuff, try and minimize the number of plugins you're using. Don't install 3 different types of social sharing plugins. Pick something, always try and keep that down. The fewer plugins, the faster your site will load, and just kind of try and always keep that in mind as you're looking at plugins to add.
Excellent. And then on the other side of that question is another question, which is, what are some social sharing tools that you could use as a blogger to share your own content? And I'll just start with that one. And that is, I use CoSchedule. I really, really like it. It helps me as I'm actually writing the post. I can immediately go down and create a sharing schedule for that post. So I love that.
That's nice. I haven't used CoSchedule. Yeah. We pretty much just use Tailwind at this point. We've used Buffer app before. There's ones, Meet Edgar. There are all sorts of ones. I think this is a perfect example of use what makes sense to your brain. I know that some people might get maybe a little overwhelmed with something like CoSchedule because there's like so much you can do and they just want something super basic.
Yeah.
And that really is something that it's valuable to. Most of these services offer free trials, and I think it's good to get in there and see if one that maybe other people don't like, you're like, this is exactly how my brain works and I love this, and then go with that, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes. And I use Tailwind as well too, by the way.
Okay.
I use Tailwind for Pinterest, and I use CoSchedule for pretty much, because I think CoSchedule does not work with Pinterest. So I use it for everything else.
And then, just not to muddy the water, but then you also just get into Facebook prefers that you use the Facebook scheduler versus an external schedule. I mean, there's so many things out there. And I think with all of those, you kind of need to decide, where it's worth your effort and how much weight you want to put. I'm always a big fan of saying, okay, if you say that, where is the study? I mean, there's I think that it's a lot of people have a tendency to be like, this is what's happening. It's like, how do you know that? It's like, I can just tell. I can just tell. And that's always,
I heard so-and-so talking about it.
Yeah. So, I always suggest people are careful with that and ask, like, how did you test that? What was the, empirical evidence that you discovered, and over what period of time, and how many different people? And so, I think that there's, until these services want to share more exactly how they put those things together, which they don't do, because then people can work around them easier. It's going to be a sort of an ongoing he said, she said of what works the best and what you should or shouldn't be doing.
You raise a really good point, because I feel like sometimes in blogging, there's a lot of these, urban legend is probably not the right word for it, but there's all these tales that go around, like, for a while it was like you need to delete pins that aren't working on Pinterest. And God, I can't imagine how much time people probably spent on doing that. And then Pinterest comes out and says, no, you don't have to delete pens that are not performing well.
And that's why, it's so important to not take things at face value. And you really have to, when you hear something, do a little research on your own, or you could, I mean, I've literally seen multiple times someone asks a question and then a person's like, oh, well, you should do this. Or I heard somebody say you should do this. And they're like, what? Okay, I got to go through all my posts and do that now. And it's like, whoa, that's not right. But then they've done it.
Oh, you feel sick.
Like, it's so do some research. Don't just always ask questions. Where did you see that? How did they come to that determination? And then, you
go read that article.
Yeah. And then you're going to have to use your own judgment if you're ready to put, your faith in that and do whatever that means for your blog. But I really recommend doing your research.
I love it. Or listen to us or ask us the question, right? And see if we can do some research for you.
And I'll be the first person to tell you, I don't actually know. Here's what I think. I don't have anything that I've tested with I'm very upfront about saying, this is pretty concrete or this is not. Google. Links to your site. This is pretty much, you can find hundreds of articles about this is a fact. This is the most important thing that Google uses. Whereas all this other stuff where there's not that much research around with the social media networks, I would never tell you that that's what you got to do. Got to do it.
Yes. Yeah. I love it. Trevor, this has been, I know we have more questions, but I think we're going to have to bump those to next month because we have just had, it's a very rich, full session. I think, we got to end it where it's really good.
It's like that feeling when you eat too much food. We don't want you to get to that point. You want to just leave satisfied and wanting to come back to that restaurant. I think everyone will understand that.
What is this that you metaphor. Speak of eating too much? I don't know what this is.
I could show you.
I think I know this. I perform this skill on a regular basis. I agree. It's good to have that feeling of wanting more. We've got some really good questions we'll have for next month.
Yeah, we're going to Costanza it and leave on a high note. You got to leave on the high note. For the Seinfeld fans out there. Yeah.
Yes, I love Seinfeld. And Sean loves it even more than he can probably quote particular episodes. He's so good at it.
That's it. I'm out of here. That's it. I'm out. Yeah. That's what we're doing.
That's George, right?
Oh, yes. I like my Seinfeld.
Yes. Did you ever watch, what was the show, Larry David did his show, what was it? Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Brilliant. So funny.
Oh,
hilarious.
That was just so funny. I wish it would come back. Every now and then I hear a rumor it's coming back and I'm like, please.
Too good.
So this has just been a wonderful episode. Do you have any other thoughts you want to share with everybody?
No, it's been awesome. No, this was yet again successful blog talk.
Definitely.
I like that we get to judge that.
Yeah, that's right. And if you're feeling the love for Blog Talk, we would love for you to share this episode or other episodes. Go back and listen to some old ones and give us a review on Stitcher or iTunes and talk about it with your friends. We would really love that.
Love it.
Yeah. So, hey, Trevor, thanks so much for talking with me. I had a great time.
Look forward to the next time.